I'm gonna end the show now. It's just approaching 7 o'clock, and I am only halfway through the show. I've got an hour left of the show, but I was trying to reason with myself and kind of decide with myself what I'm going to do with tonight's show, given the light of recent events, and I didn't want to just carry on as normal um, with the whole Black Lives Matter movement going on and terrible things happening in the streets of the US, and to kind of stand in solidarity with those who are standing up for the death of George Floyd. And so, yeah, I wanted to acknowledge it, and I didn't want to just do the show as per normal, and I was trying to decide what to do, whether to not do the show at all or anything. So what I'm going to do, I've just done an hour of normal programming, and now I'm going to play an hour of back-to-back music of songs that I've chosen, which I think suit the current tone and kind of hopefully lend some support to the Black Lives Matter movement. And during that hour, I'm going to use that time while I'm not talking on the radio, but while I'm still on air, just going to play the music, and I'm going to use that time, that hour, to sign petitions, to read some articles, to get educated, because I feel like that is the respectable thing to do and a kind of decent course of action that I can take while I'm on the radio. And I think that's what I can do with this platform that I've got. I'm not saying, this is me washing my hands. I've done my bit. There's no guilt on me. Not at all. Not at all. The complete opposite. I'm saying this is me starting my stand and starting a journey and hopefully some education and some knowledge. So I wanted to bring that on the air tonight and share my stance and what I am currently thinking throughout this whole thing. And I feel like this time it is different because obviously I am 28 years old. I've lived through various Black Lives Matter movements, and there's been unlawful killings on the streets of unarmed and innocent black people all over the world that I have seen on the news. And this time is different because I kind of feel like up until now I've always washed my hands of it, and I've thought, it's not my fight. It's not my fight. It's not my place to get involved. And that in itself is, I feel, how deeply rooted racism has become, in that I have turned my back on the problem and thought that that's okay. And that in itself is, it is just racism, isn't it? I want to play you a clip from a podcast which I listened to from George the Poet. The podcast is called Have You Heard George's Podcast? And it is an incredibly insightful podcast. Very, very good series that I would recommend you listen to if you're looking to educate yourself and kind of do something at last. And this clip particularly stuck out to me. It's from the Grenfell episode. And I heard this last year, and this was a real moment in me when I was like, wow, racism isn't just calling someone a racist term. It's so deeply ingrained in society, and it's become so clever that it's just hiding in plain sight everywhere. And this is the clip that triggered that thought process to me, and I'd like to share it with you now.
Once upon a time there lived a boy called Francis. Francis was born into a wealthy family. His grandfather and his great-grandfather were businessmen, and his dad earned a healthy salary. Francis bought his way into the army, 18 years old, paying it off calmly. And over the course of his life he's earning honours, more than a lot of learned scholars. All kinds of them awards, like the title of a lord and the cross of St. Michael and St. George. So yeah, he was English. And as you can tell, he was fairly distinguished. When he died, he had a road named after him. Seems like he was always on the path to win because of the background of the woman who mothered him and the man who was actually there to father him. But what did these people do for a living? What business was his great-grandfather in? Them man was shutting and ting. But their product just happened to be copper and tin. This is in the 1800s, by the way. So you just know right away, those guys were paid. Little Frankie Boys joined the British Army in 1859, and it was a career he stuck to. So to anyone who's got a bit of a history mind, 1859, what do you think he got up to? Of course, the scramble for Africa. When Europe decided to come and handle the land for us, then turned into vandals and wrapped it up, crushing our systems like plastic cups. Frankie fought in the south, east and north, carrying that white man's burden, proceeding forth. See, even though he came from wealth, on the battlefield he made a name for himself, and because of his achievements and the time he spent alive, he was remembered when he died in 1925. He had a building named after him half a century on, and that name will last potentially long after we've eventually gone. You see, Lord Francis Grenfell is the first name on Grenfell Tower's Wikipedia page. But Grenfell Tower isn't even mentioned on his Wikipedia page. At the time of writing, the public inquiry hadn't even reached its intermediate stage, and how long that will take isn't easy to gauge. Yet after a whole year of coverage, this is a line of commentary with which the media didn't really engage. Grenfell the man helped to colonize the land that a lot of these immigrant residents migrated from. But even though they weren't the murderers and robbers, this guy's name lives on.
As George the Poet taken an excerpt from his podcast, Have You Heard George's podcast, the Grenfell episode. Really, really cannot recommend that podcast series enough to listen to, because it's this sort of material. It's black people speaking out and sharing their experiences, which will enlighten us and in turn hopefully help us empower them and just flush the whole toxic system and restart the whole thing. Because I mean, I had stuff like that. It's really uncomfortable to listen to, because it hits me personally and makes me realise that my idea of racism was wrong. Because I always thought things like, I've got loads of black friends. How can I be racist? I've never insulted a black person. I'm not racist. I'm not white myself. How can I be racist? How can I be part of the problem? But things like that, the fact that Grenfell Tower, when we were mourning the deaths of immigrants, of people of colour, we were using the name Grenfell, who was a colonizer, to mourn these people. And I didn't even realise where the name Grenfell come from. I didn't realise he was a colonizer of Africa. That's how deeply ingrained racism is in the system. It's stealthy. It makes people think that they're not racist and they're not part of the racist problem when they are. It made me think that I'm not racist when I am part of the racist problem. This is so multi-layered that it's difficult to process. So to start, we can educate ourselves and start to try and unpick and understand the problem, and then take relevant steps from there. Because to be honest, I don't have the answers. This is a corner turn for me. So from now until 8 o'clock, the show is off. I'm not doing the show. I'm playing back-to-back music, which I think is relevant and informative. So if you just want to sit and listen to the music, you're going to hear music from Solange, Chronix, Tupac, Beyonce, Kendrick, Bob Marley, all people which can offer an insight. So if you just want to sit and listen to the music, listen to the lyrics, that's great. I'm going to be tweeting out links to organizations you can fund. petitions to sign. I'm just going to sit here for an hour and sign petitions because that's what I can do. That's what I can do for now. And I want to maneuver myself into a better, more moral and ethical position. So the show is off. An hour of music starts now. Thanks for listening to the program. And I'll see you when I'm next on air. And we're going to start with Kano.